Gauteng Education Department is willing to give Enock Mpianzi's family under R1 million as compensation for the boy's death. The family wants 20 million. The 13-year-old pupil drowned at an unauthorized camp during a Parktown Boys High initiation camp in January. The department says it hasn't been to court with the family yet, but can one put a rand value to a child's life? Let's get some legal insight now with the lawyer Zola Majavu. Zola, good morning and thanks so much for your time. Just help us understand this. And I've been asking myself this, all morning as a parent myself. When you lose a child in this way, how does one even go about calculating what it is that you want in compensation for this?
Firstly, good morning to you, Uveka, and good morning to your viewers. No amount of money can substitute a loss of a loved one, worse of child. However, unfortunately, legally, the person who makes an allegation must prove it. In this instance, I accept that the department seems to have considered the merits, namely, they are prepared to shoulder some responsibility. The dispute then seems to be about the quantum. The family wants 20 million, the department says 1 million. Typically, those types of damages are very difficult to quantify, and each case must be viewed on its own merits. If you look at $1 million versus 20 million, the parties seem to be very far apart. And in the event that there is no agreement, this matter will end up being decided by either an arbitrator or a judge. And with respect and without preempting the outcome thereof, it may be a steep hill for the Mpianzi family to climb and to convince a court that 20 million is appropriate, because at best their claim is for shock, trauma, or pain and suffering, and that's very difficult to find. Let me give an example. If Uveka had passed away as a result of my own lawful wrongdoing, your children would have a claim for loss of support, and that is easily quantifiable because we know how much you earn, we know how old you are, and how long you may still have been gainfully employed, your age of your children, as far as how long would you still have had a duty to support them. So that one, actuarially, is very easy to determine. But in terms of general damages, meaning damages that cannot be determined by an exact size, it's always a difficult one.
I was just wondering what both sides would have to bring to the table. What will they have to prove, Zola, to say that this amount, to justify the amounts that the one is asking for and the other one is offering?
The court would, for example, if the parents were there and they witnessed this horrific incident, obviously their trauma at that stage would be a lot more heightened and more pronounced. And it is something that the court would pay particular attention to. But in this instance, the trauma that they would have suffered is trauma that happened after the fact. Obviously, it's not a good idea, a thing for a parent to learn that your child is disappeared. But I'm just giving an example of if they had experienced the child dying and in situations where they're helpless, there could be a case made. And here, it is the pain and suffering or the loss of losing a loved one. It is not young Mpianzi himself instituting a claim on his behalf. So quite frankly, I don't see how they could possibly get to 20 million. An example, there are people who are wheelchair bound as a result of an accident, for example, who have not even been given a quarter of that amount. So this matter is going to end up in court. And the other consideration is, if, for example, the department had the money and they pay 20 million, tomorrow it is Uveka's child who suffers some form of harm or dies, does that mean that now a precedent has been set? So there's a number of considerations that have to be considered carefully.
And in terms of the actual findings of some investigations already, those of negligence and that this was an unauthorized trip and that the department didn't know anything about it, how much would that sort of play a role in what the family can actually demand from the Gauteng Education Department, which says it didn't authorize this trip? This was the school taking matters into its own hands and doing its own thing, as far as we know so far.
Not much, because that would have gone towards settling the merits, namely who should shoulder liability for this wrongful action that has resulted in the death of a loved one. So that settles that, but it would not assist them much in terms of determining the quantum, the amount of money by which you are attempting to get solace for your loss. That the fact that a tribunal or some inquiry has already found in your favor is not going to assist in terms of quantum. Quantum is, if I say I'm entitled to 20 million, I've got to say to a court, this is how I come to that particular 20 million. And if the department says 1 million, the department will have to explain why. For the department, they probably refer to previously decided cases where similar amounts might have been offered and they inflate it accordingly, CPIX, or use some formula. But it's not a thumbs up. And I can assure you that it is going to be very difficult for that particular family, sympathizing with their loss as I do, to be able to convince any court that 20 million is fair and just. If they succeed, well and good for them, but no amount of money can replace the loss of a loved one. Legal principles must also guide the computation of that fund.
So if I can ask you very, very quickly, we are out of time, but what is the best, in your expert opinion, that the family can hope for in this situation?
If I were the legal advice, I would say take that million and run. Because if they don't agree, they may end up losing even that million, because the department might then take the stance that, look, we're denying liability and let's go to court. That plays itself out in a couple of years. The rent value of what they will recover then will be far reduced. But it's up to them to make it.
All right, Advocate Zola Majavu, thank you so much for some insight there. Well, that is my lot for today. Tulasizwe Simelane coming up in just a couple of minutes on the other side of this. Bye-bye.